All right, so we are so thrilled and honored to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio. He's the CEO of the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Wow, we're coming up in the world. Winfried Engelbrecht-Bresges, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be on your show. And it's a great time in Hong Kong. It's 9:55 p.m. So that's the time when I normally start my second shift.
Well, we appreciate you making some time, squeezing us in, because it is a very busy time for Hong Kong and the Hong Kong Jockey Club. It's the biggest week of the year in Hong Kong. Even maybe it's one of the biggest weeks, period, in the global racing calendar. You've got the Longines Hong Kong International races coming up this week. Can you share with us some of the things you're looking forward to and what makes this event so special?
I think we had always a vision to be one of the big global providers of what I call racing entertainment and be one, in a way, of the key global players. So we came up with our strategy in 1998, because before we were pretty regional. And then we said we want to really be one of the global leaders. And we came up with the concept to create a really global racing event. And our global racing event is then anchored on the 4 Group 1 races, the sprint, the 1200, the mile, the 2000 and the 2400, all on turf. Because with 1300 horses, you have to focus if you want to create quality. So, and we created then these international races with significant prize money, which really drove Hong Kong racing to a different level. In 1998, we had 0 horses in the international classification. Now, with 1200 horses, 1300 horses, we have normally 16 to 18. So, and when you look at the world's horse population, we run 0.7% of the world's races, but we have 8% of the best horses trained in Hong Kong. This has stimulated the whole industry. And then on the Wednesday night, we wanted to showcase the best jockey talent from around the world, and we created this jockey series. And if you ever go to Hong Kong, I highly recommend Happy Wednesday. Is an absolutely unique experience. You're in the middle of the center, you have evening races, you are very close to the horses. So that are the 2 key anchor events which draw international crowd, which draws international participation. And it is practically part of our global brand to be really provide world-class sport. And this is our journey to excellence. And therefore, it stimulates our owners to buy the best horses because they want to win the international races. And it helps us to recruit some of the best trainers and jockeys who want to ride then not only in the international races, but on a permanent basis. So it's a key strategic anchor of our whole global racing strategy.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, the proof is there with the best horses, and there's so many people in the stands and so much money being wagered. It's a great example that we should be looking into as well here in the States. And we noticed that you recently were reelected as the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities, the IFHA chair. What exactly does that mean to you individually, and what does it mean to Hong Kong racing?
First of all, I think it is a great honor to be entrusted with this position, because especially racing faces significant challenges. And I personally think we can face these challenges only if you work globally and collaboratively to address the key challenges we have. So I'm now re-elected after 3 years. Obviously, my colleague thought I didn't do a too bad job. And I think it's definitely a recognition of the achievement which Hong Kong has made on the global stage. Because what we do, it's not only for Hong Kong. We see that horse racing is connected globally, and everything which has negatively happened in one part of the world has an impact on the other. So that we, in a way, created what I was very keen on, practically a virtual global office, where we collect the best minds in racing administration around the world. So from Japan to, in a way, Australia, to Hong Kong, to Europe, and last not least to US and to South America, so that we work together to address significant issues. And definitely it is for the Hong Kong Jockey Club a recognition of the contributions we have made over the years, which I think is extremely important. And our government, who sees that we have been able to really become a global leader, and that gives us the enforcement, and that gives us the support. For example, the government in the last policy address announced that we are now, as one of the key equine industry and as Hong Kong Jockey Club, a key tourist attraction. So this plays all the issue that the global leadership and what we do is recognized by our government now that this helps the internationalization of racing and around the globe.
As the FHA chair, I think you have an interesting global perspective on racing and on the health of racing. We've kind of reached an inflection point here in the U.S. in the last several years, trying to figure out a way to make it a level playing field and get rid of some of the trainers that were doing nefarious things. We have a new regulatory body in place that I think is making some progress. What is your general sense of the health of the sport on a global scale? What are some of the things that you think that racing needs to do to ensure that it exists for the next 100, 200 years?
I outlined in one of my first keynote speeches and strategy sessions we had that we think racing is on the brink of either taking off again, or that we, in a way, face significant challenge, which leads to a significant contraction. And this will lead to significant contraction of an ecosystem of racing. So in this, I outlined 9 challenges. And without going to all the challenges, what I think is key, one thing we face as industry is industry fragmentation. And if you have structural problems, you can solve them only with a holistic strategy where you agree and then implement this holistically. We have to be very key. Integrity of the sport is, for me, the key anchor and the trust in relation to customers. Then we face significant challenges from illegal operators who really don't make contributions to the sport. It's not only financial, but they have normally a significant negative impact on the integrity. And social acceptability, which is, for me, probably one of the key issues we have to address. And I see it in 2 aspects. First is from animal welfare. And the other one is that a sport cannot make only contribution to the industry participants, but what is the contribution of the sport to the community, to the society? And that you have to get really racing anchored in the society to be able to get your buy-in. And it comes the aging customer base. If you see many of the jurisdictions face a significant aging customer base, where you have 60, 70% of the fans are 50 plus, which is good that we have these loyal fans. But if we not become relevant for a younger segment, if we don't create a different way how horse racing is seen as an entertainment, I think we would have significant sustainability issues. And I feel that we have to portray racing not only as wagering, we have to portray it as global sport. People have a wagering propensity, they will wager. But if we are focused too much on the wagering side, even we know that is significant of our income stream, the social acceptability, and that goes back that people say you make use of horses for gaining profits. And if you don't tell the story, that's an ecosystem. How many people love horses? How many people take care of horses? And how the breeding and racing circle is united. I think these are our key challenges. And I firmly believe we can do this only with a united approach. And that means that the racing jurisdictions have worked closer together. And we have to address hygiene factors. And what you mentioned, I'm really glad that HISA has been established. Right. We had serious concern about certain development, especially in the US, where you had an unacceptable breakdown rate of horses, and where you had significant manipulation of horses via prohibited substances. So this was one, when you look at social acceptability, we really glad. And I looked at the figures. If you see that the breakdown rate have practically half of those breakdown rates you have on non-HISA regulated tracks. And when you see as a positive development, we had a very interesting coming together from the best experts around the world to address animal welfare, how you reduce the breakdown rate of horses. We had this in Canada. We have to use science to really minimize this, but in the end, it is best practices and how we as a sport can show that we love horses and what we do is ethically responsible.
Right. Right. And I'm glad that you brought up HISA because Joe and I actually had Lisa Lazarus, the CEO of HISA, on a couple of weeks ago. And we're obviously very big fans of HISA and regulatory influence in the United States. And quite frankly, I think we've taken that from we've taken a cue from you as far as what's going on in Hong Kong and the safety measures that you put into place. What other things do you think that here in the States or worldwide that we could actually adopt that you guys are already implementing that would make an impact and relevance in racing here?
I think, Heiser, we had long discussions, and we see our role as IJFA and especially as Hong Kong Jockey Club to provide platform where you share best practices. What we do is, when it comes to one aspect, is really first prohibited substances. We have probably the most holistic system how you prevent that practices, especially prohibited substances, are used. So we have we have regulatory vets, we have clinical vets. They completely operate separately. They're all employed by the club. We have an intensive in training control system, despite all these, in a way, regulatory vets, what they do. And our lab, I would humbly say, is probably the best equine lab in the world. We can even do tests at the day the horse runs, is a comprehensive test in the morning before the horse is running. So the probability that a horse with a prohibited substance run is minimal, and it comes only that maybe you have a Marfu a stable hand who mixes up feed, but even this is detected. So the integrity of the sport is key. Then when you look at track maintenance, how much technology we use. But globally, I think we have to use more science and how you measure, in a way, horses in training. If you see a change of strike rate, that you then say, look, there's suddenly a higher risk. So this is where we have, as an industry, say how we can use technology, how we work together, and how we share this. And this is, I think, key. And I personally think Heiser and the US industry, and with the support of the Jockey Club as a thought leader, has done a fantastic job to turn around a situation which would have, in my view, lead to the extinction of the sport due to social acceptability.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question on that. I think one of the things that Hong Kong does really well that we could learn from is having an on-track pharmacy where anything that could possibly go into the horse's body has to be bought on track, on the premises. How realistic is that to expand to other jurisdictions? Does it just work because it's a really localized race circuit? Like, what were the challenges in implementing that?
I personally think it is definitely a great advantage if you have all the vets and being now regulatory or clinical vets employed by us as an organization. And there's no external permitted to treat horses. So that's an internal side. I have to admit, in Germany, we introduced 30 years ago in training controls. And we had a so-called medication book where the vets who treated this had to document every medication. Then we did the in training controls, and if you see that discrepancy, then you have to make sure that this vet is not treating horses anymore. In an ideal world, when you have a more fragmented system regarding running stables, I think the licensing of vets is a key element to ensure integrity of the system. It's easier said than done, I appreciate this, but if you don't, in a way, control the risk of people abusing the system is significant.
For sure. One more question for me. I don't know, John, if you have anything else, but I wanted to ask about the whirlpool, which is something that I wasn't that familiar with. So basically, it's commingling a lot of different race days in several different countries, commingling the pools together as opposed to having the fragmented pool from the bookmakers in Ireland or UK. This was your brainchild. So tell me, what was the genesis of this, and then what have been the benefits that you've seen from this whirlpool wagering?
I introduced the concept of whirlpools. It's the Asian Racing Federation in February 2007. Wow. It took a little bit of time to implement it. The basic logic is, if you have the best races from around the world, that you create liquidity in one pool. So where you have the most liquidity, and that you then create standards. Even if it comes now, how you produce the races, what are the minimum standards on quality control, and you anchor this around the best races in the world, you pool the liquidity. This, first of all, if you have separate pools, bookmakers or illegal bookmakers have arbitrage opportunities. When you have, let me say now, a Hong Kong horse runs in Australia, the Australian customer has a completely different view of the Hong Kong horse than the Hong Kong customer. But when you merge this pool, you suddenly create completely new value propositions, which is much more value. And with the liquidity, you will, like in stock market, liquidity drives liquidity. So we have made great progress. We started this whole whirlpool concept with Royal Ascot. That was the start. And if you see now, we have limits how many races we could took. In Hong Kong is everything strong regulated that you don't overuse gambling. So we run only 820 races ourselves. And we run now around 100, 200 whirlpool races. But what we want to do, we want to capture the best races from around the world. Then we want to create, and we're working on a new wagering protocol where you can create even more exotic bets. But if you look alone in Great Britain, every race pool, a whirlpool meeting creates around 600,000 pounds. So that's around 800,000 US dollars for the horse track, which I think is, if you look at royalty fee, intellectual property, is a very good start. So we have practically this year in the whirlpool around 10 billion euro, which were bet on whirlpool races. And, and I can see the liquidity, which is in the system, is a start. So therefore, and as one example, even the time zone is not in a way ideal. We had the meeting in the US where we bet on 4 races, the Pacific, I think it was 18 million US dollars was in the US. And we had 5 million US dollars on 4 races at a very early time in Hong Kong. So if we would extend this globally, I think the income stream we can generate it for operators is significant. But I would like to use certain income of the whirlpool for those initiatives who make a difference, be it animal welfare, be it integrity management, be it education of people. So we have to generate more revenue to build capability and capacity. And I personally think we have the opportunity then, if we brand these whirlpool races globally, we can create a different brand which is more attractive for racegoers and present racing as a sport, but harvest practically the liquidity via the whirlpool.
Yeah, no, I think the internationalizing of the sport is huge and crucial, and it's a great endeavor. And it sounds awesome that you're going to try to direct some of those funds to sustainability projects for the sport. This has been fascinating, Winfried. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for all the great work you do, and best of luck this week at the international races.
Thank you, and would love to host you in Hong Kong. So mark your calendar. Always the second Sunday in December is our big international race meeting, and the Wednesday before is Happy Wednesday. So hope to see you next year, and you can see the races in 60 countries, so I'm sure you can follow.
Yeah, That's bucket list item for me. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Pleasure. See you. Bye-bye.